June 12th, 2025. It starts like any other morning at Ahmedabad's airport. Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner heading for London Gatwick. 230 passengers, 12 crew. Cleared for takeoff. But then, just moments after getting airborne, something goes catastrophically wrong. So today, we're doing a deep dive into the preliminary report from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau on that crash, the crash of Air India VTANB. And it's important to stress, right? This is preliminary. It's about facts found so far, purely for accident prevention. No blame being assigned here.
Absolutely. And what's really striking is just how fast everything happened. This report pieces it all together second by second using all sorts of evidence. We'll look at the timeline, the physical clues, and there's this really puzzling exchange from the cockpit voice recorder. It gives you a rare look into how these investigations work.
Yeah, we'll get into the aircraft, the crew, the conditions that day. We'll trace the wreckage path, look at the damage on the ground. And of course, we'll unpack what the flight data and cockpit voice recorders actually captured in those final, absolutely chilling moments. What can it tell us about why something like this happens? Let's start, though, with the immediate scene. Because this wasn't just an accident, it was a massive human tragedy.
It really was. The report is stark. Everyone on the crew, all 12, lost their lives. And 229 of the 230 passengers, just devastating. But the impact went beyond the plane itself. 19 people tragically died on the ground as well, and another 67 were seriously injured there. Plus, that one passenger who survived the crash sustained serious injuries too.
So the total toll is just staggering.
Yeah, 260 lives lost directly, 68 people seriously hurt. It's a huge scale.
And with a flight bound for London, you immediately think about the international side of things.
Right. The report confirms passengers from the UK, Portugal, and Canada were among those who died. So the investigation instantly became an international effort. You had the NTSB from the U.S. involved because, Boeing's the manufacturer.
Right. State of design manufacturing.
Exactly. And then the investigation authorities from the UK, Portugal, and Canada joined too. The NTSB even brought in technical advisors from Boeing, GE for the engines, and the FAA. That kind of collaboration is, well, it's vital when things are this complex.
Okay, let's zoom in on the aircraft itself. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, registration VTANB. What do we know about its history?
Well, it was manufactured back in 2013, operated by Air India its whole life. Critically, its airworthiness certificate was valid, good, until May 2026. And it just passed its airworthiness review check only weeks before, on May 22nd, 2025. It had clocked up nearly 42,000 flight hours.
Almost 42,000 hours. And the engines.
The GE-GX engines were actually quite new to this airframe. One was installed May 1st, 2025, the other just before that, March 26th, so relatively recent additions.
Okay. What about any ongoing maintenance issues? Were there any MLL items active, minimum equipment list things?
Yes, there were a few. The report lists them out. MLs allow certain non-critical items to be inoperative for a limited time. There were 4 Category C items, things like the flight deck door camera, the airport map function, some network component, the printer. All minor, valid for another week or so. There was 1 Category AML for nitrogen generation performance, valid until June 20th, and a few Category D things for cabin and cargo snags.
But nothing grounding the aircraft.
No, nothing like that. And importantly, the report states all mandatory airworthiness directives, ADs, and alert service bulletins were up to date for the plane and the engines. Everything required had been done.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? Something that jumps out. This FAA bulletin from 2018 and SAIB about the fuel control switch.
Ah, yes. The Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin. This is a key point. It's important to understand the difference between an SAIB and an AD, an Airworthiness Directive.
Right. An AD is mandatory and SAIB is
Advisory. Exactly. This SAIB, NM 1833, came out in December 2018. It mentioned that some Boeing 737 operators had found fuel control switches installed without their locking feature properly engaged. And the design of that switch part number is similar across several Boeing types, including the 787-8 involved here.
But the FAA didn't make it mandatory?
No. They explicitly stated it wasn't considered an unsafe condition requiring an AD, so it was just a recommendation. And advisory.
And Air India's response?
They confirmed to investigators they hadn't done the suggested inspections because, well, it wasn't mandatory. Now, the throttle control module on this specific aircraft, VTANB, had been replaced twice in 2019 and 2023. But the report says those replacements weren't related to the fuel switch issue itself.
And no problems with the fuel switch have been reported since 2023.
Correct. No reported defects on that specific part. So you have this known advisory for a similar part, but it wasn't mandatory, and the airline followed the rules by not acting on it. Still, it hangs there as a piece of information, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Okay, let's shift to the crew. What did the report tell us about them?
We had a 56-year-old captain, the pilot in command, or PIC, very experienced guy. ATPL holder, over 15,600 total hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and importantly, almost 8,600 hours on the 787- itself, with over 8,200 as PIC on type. So he knew the aircraft incredibly well.
And the co-pilot.
The co-pilot was younger, 32 years old,
Yeah.
a CPO holder. His total time was around 3,400 hours, with just over 1,100 hours on the 787-88. No command time on type yet.
So a very experienced hand alongside someone still building significant time on type.
Correct. Both were based in Mumbai. They've flown into Ahmedabad the day before, so they should have been well rested.
And fit for duty.
Yes, both passed their pre-flight breathalyzer tests, cleared medically for the flight.
And who was actually flying this leg?
The co-pilot was designated as the pilot flying, the PF. So he was hands-on with the controls for takeoff. The captain was pilot monitoring, the PM overseeing.
Got it. And the conditions outside? Weather, airport?
All looked pretty normal. Light winds, about 6 or 7 knots. Good visibility, 6,000 meters. Temperatures were hot, yeah, 36 to 38 Celsius, but nothing unusual for Ahmedabad. The airport itself, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International, is a licensed airport Category 9 fire cover. Runway 23, which they used, has a standard ILS Category 1 system. All seem normal.
Did anything flag up from the previous flight the aircraft operated?
Yes, there was one thing mentioned. The crew flying in from Delhi, Flight AI423, had reported a STAB POS XDCR status message. That relates to the stabilizer position transducer.
Okay. And what happened with that?
Air India's maintenance engineer on duty followed the troubleshooting steps from the full isolation manual, the THAFM. They completed the procedure and released the aircraft as serviceable for this flight to London.
And weight, fuel. Okay.
Yeah, takeoff weight was 213,401 kilograms. Fuel on board 54,200 kilograms. Both well within limits. And importantly, no dangerous goods declared on board.
Okay, so the stage is set. Now let's get into the actual accident sequence. This is where the recorders become absolutely critical.
Hugely critical. The aircraft had 2 enhanced airborne flight recorders, EAFRs. Think of them as advanced black boxes. The one in the tail, the aft EAFR, was badly damaged in the crash and fire. But the forward one, although also burnt, was recovered. And thanks to the NTSB providing what they call a golden chassis, basically specialized hardware, they managed to download the data successfully.
And what did that give them?
A lot. About 49 hours of flight data, covering the accident flight and previous ones, and crucially, 2 hours of cockpit voice recording, the CVR.
Okay. Walk us through the timeline from the ATC and recorder data. Taxi, lineup.
Right. ATC tapes show pushback and engine start approval around 07.43 UTC. They confirmed needing the full runway length. Taxi clearance came at 07.55. They started moving about a minute later. Handed off to tower control around 08.02. Told to line up on runway 23 just before 08.04. Everything very standard.
And then takeoff clearance.
Yes. Cleared for takeoffs at 08.07.33 UTC. The takeoff roll started 4 seconds later, 08.07.37. The EAFR data tracks the speeds precisely. They hit V1, the decision speed, 153 knots, at 08.08.33. 2 seconds later, VR, rotation speed, 155 knots. And then at 08.08.39, the sensors show weight off wheels. Liftoff.
Okay, liftoff. And this is where things turn instantly. What happens next?
It's incredibly fast. Just 3 seconds after liftoff at 08.08.42 UTC, the plane hits its maximum recorded airspeed for the flight, 180 knots. And at that exact moment, maybe a fraction after, both engine fuel cutoff switches move from run to cutoff. First engine 1, then engine 2, just 1 second between them.
Both engines.
And immediately, the N1 and N2 readings, the fan and core speeds, start plummeting. Fuel supply shut off. They're losing thrust rapidly.
My God, what does the CVR, the voice recorder, capture at that precise moment?
This is maybe the most chilling part of the preliminary report. The CVR recorded one pilot asking the other quite clearly, "Why did you cut off?"
Asking why he cut the fuel.
Yes. And the other pilot's response was immediate and definitive. "I did not do so."
He denied doing it.
Unequivocally denied it, according to the transcript excerpt in the report. A direct denial recorded just seconds after the switches moved. Hugely significant.
Wow. And there was visual evidence, too, from airport CCTV.
That's right. Airport cameras caught something else happening right after liftoff during that initial climb. The Ram air turbine deployed.
The RAT, the emergency power generator.
Exactly. It's a small wind turbine that drops down to provide essential hydraulic and electrical power if you lose main engine power. Seeing it deploy is a clear sign of a major power loss event.
Consistent with the fuel being cut off.
Perfectly consistent. The report also mentions, by the way, no significant bird activity was seen around that time.
So engines winding down, RAT deployed. What happens then? Did they try to restart?
They did. The data shows a clear attempt to recover. As the engines wound down, the RAT's hydraulic pump kicked in around 8.08.47. Then at 8.08.52, the EAFR shows engine 1's fuel cutoff switch moving back, from fit-off to run. They're trying to relight it.
Okay.
2 seconds later, 08.08.54, the APU inlet door starts opening. That's the auxiliary power unit in the tail. It's trying to auto-start, likely to provide backup electrical power. And then at 8.08.56, engine 2's fuel switch also moves back to run-in.
So they're trying to get both engines going again.
Yes. And when you move those switches back to run-in flight, the FEDTs, the engine computers, automatically manage a relight sequence. The EDT, exhausting gas temperature for both engines, starts to rise. That shows fuel is flowing again. They're attempting relight. Engine 1's core speed stops decelerating and actually starts to recover a bit. Engine 2 also relights. You see the EGT rise, but its core speed keeps falling even though fuel is being reintroduced. It wasn't recovering properly.
So a partial recovery on one engine but not the other, and the plane is incredibly low and slow at this point, right?
Absolutely dire. They're seconds past liftoff, losing altitude and speed. At about 08.09.05, just over 25 seconds after liftoff, one of the pilots transmits, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday."
The controller heard the mayday.
Yes, the controller asked for the call sign, tried to clarify who it was, but there was no response. Instead, the controller witnessed the aircraft crash just outside the airport boundary.
And the EAFR.
The recording stopped at 08:09.1 UTC, less than 35 seconds from liftoff to the end of the recording.
Incredibly fast. Emergency services were activated shortly after.
Yes, the alert went out at 08.14.44 UTC.
The report then goes into the wreckage site. What did the physical evidence on the ground show?
The impact was about 0.9 nautical miles from the end of the runway, hitting the BJ Medical College hostel complex. The wreckage was spread over a rectangular area, roughly 1,000 feet by 400 feet. Initial impact marks on trees and a chimney, then the main impact with Building A of the hostel. The marks suggest the plane hit nose up, maybe around 8 degrees, and wings level.
Nose up, wings level.
Yeah. The tail section, the vertical stabilizer, and the right main landing gear actually got embedded in Building A. The right engine hit a concrete water tank on that building and separated. The left main gear and parts of the left wing hit Building C, and the left engine hit Building D at ground level. It stayed there and was severely damaged by the post-crash fire.
What about the controls in the cockpit? Especially things like flaps, gear, thrust levers.
Okay, this is really important. The flap handle was found set at 5 degrees. That's consistent with the normal takeoff setting. And the EAFR data confirms the flaps were at 5 degrees.
Okay.
The landing gear lever was found in the down position.
Still down. They hadn't retracted it yet.
Apparently not, or perhaps it was moved during the event or impact. Now, the thrust levers, the quadrant was badly damaged by fire. The levers themselves were found near the aft, or idle, position after the crash.
Idle, but they would have been at takeoff thrust just seconds before.
Exactly. And this is a key discrepancy the report highlights. The EAFR data is clear. The thrust levers remained forward, commanding takeoff thrust, right up until the recording ended at impact.
So the physical position found later doesn't match the recorded data moments before?
Correct. It strongly suggests the impact forces likely moved the levers back to the idle position found in the wreckage. It doesn't reflect the pilot's input at the time of the crash.
And the fuel control switches, the ones that started this whole sequence, where were they found?
They were found in the RN position after the crash.
Back in RN, consistent with the attempt to relight the engines.
Consistent with where the EAFR showed they were moved back to during the relight attempt, yes. Physically in the on position in the wreckage.
Okay. So where does the investigation stand now? What are the next steps mentioned in this preliminary report?
Well, the on-site work at the wreckage location is done. They've done drone mapping, collected everything. The wreckage has been moved to a secure hangar for detailed examination. Both engines have been recovered and are basically quarantined, waiting for teardown and analysis. Key components from the engines and airframe have been tagged for further specialist examination.
What about fuel? Any issues there?
They tested fuel samples from the airport fuel trucks and storage tanks that refueled the aircraft. Those samples were found satisfactory, meeting specs. They also managed to get some very limited fuel samples from the aircraft wreckage itself, like from the APU fuel filter and a valve in the wing. Those are waiting for more specialized lab tests.
And the crucial recorder data.
The downloaded data from that forward EAFR, both the flight data and the CVR, is undergoing very detailed analysis. That's obviously a huge focus. They've also taken statements from eyewitnesses on the ground and, importantly, from the single surviving passenger.
Right, there was one survivor from the aircraft.
Yes. And they're also doing a full analysis of the postmortem reports for the crew and passengers, looking for any aeromedical factors or clues.
Given everything we've heard, especially the fuel switch movement and the denial on the CBR, it's quite striking that the report makes no immediate safety recommendations. Can you explain why that might be?
That's standard for a preliminary report. Its job is really to lay out the facts as known so far. It explicitly says, at this stage of investigation, there are no recommended actions to be 787-8 and/or GEGX-1B engine operators and manufacturers.
So no immediate alerts to airlines or anything?
Not based on this preliminary data dump, no. Issuing recommendations, especially potentially grounding fleets or requiring major checks, requires a much higher burden of proof and certainty about the cause. They need to complete the analysis, examine the components, potentially simulate scenarios before they can confidently point to a root cause and suggest specific preventative actions. The investigation is very much ongoing.
Okay, so we've walked through this preliminary report on Air India 171. It paints a picture of just an incredibly rapid, catastrophic event and some deeply puzzling elements. That critical moment, seconds after liftoff, where the fuel is cut off, followed immediately by that denial on the CVR. I did not do so.
It's profoundly confusing. The investigation is clearly being painstaking, trying to reconcile the data, the physical evidence, the recordings. That denial, simultaneous with the RI deploying, it just creates this incredibly dramatic and, frankly, baffling picture of those final seconds. What was actually happening on that flight deck?
And it leaves us and the investigators with these huge questions. How do you reconcile physical evidence like the thrust levers found at idle with recorder data showing they were at full power moments before, especially when you have a pilot explicitly denying the action cutting the fuel that the aircraft systems recorded happening? What could explain that?
And you have to wonder, what role, if any, does that old advisory play? That non-mandatory FAA bulletin about the fuel control switch locking mechanism on similar switches could have known, but non-mandatory potential issue somehow be a factor in this incredibly fast sequence of events. It really underscores how complex these investigations are. It's a stark reminder, isn't it? Even things that aren't mandatory directives, just advisories, can potentially become critical pieces in understanding why a tragedy like this unfolds. It's all part of the puzzle they're trying to solve to prevent it from ever happening again.